We got Delian in the house. Welcome to the Temple of Technology.
He's back.
How you doing?
Oh yeah, Delta V, and I heard today was the day where we were all supposed to call him from the factory floor. So I
Oh yeah, the
moved
rumor's gotten
downstairs.
around. I like it. It's a
Welcome.
beautiful background.
Proof of work.
Proof of work.
Nothing in
It's
the
great.
background is ITAR control. That makes it sit in
Fantastic.
one place. So unfortunately, it's the least interesting view of the factory
Hey, we
floor.
got a nice logo back there. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just given a little bit of a history of kind of how we got here and the evolution of defense tech. Can you walk me through kind of like, I literally just ended it like 2020. How have you experienced it? How would you explain to someone that's kind of just like generally aware of venture, like how did we get to this particular mix of firms and companies and strategies in defense tech investing?
Yeah, I'll use a funny analogy to describe the various generations of defense tech and how it's evolved over time. If you look at the basically 2003 through 2015, call it time period, in order to start a successful company in like defense, aerospace, thing that basically worked with the government, you both had to be a billionaire co-founder and you had to be willing to sue the U.S. government in order to have any success. And so both SpaceX and Palantir in the 2010 through 12 time period basically had to sue the government in order to win contracts. 2015 to call it roughly 2019.
We're gonna sue our customers.
Yeah.
The playbook is like we're gonna sue our only
That
customer.
doesn't apply anywhere else. You don't hear about like, oh yeah, like this
Yeah,
B2B
I really
SaaS
wanna-
company had to sue
I really-
Nike to get them to use their SaaS product.
Yeah, we really want Ramp to sponsor us. We're
so we're
gonna
gonna sue them. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it gives you a sense of like how difficult it was. It's
crazy.
the only people that could afford to sue their customers and still be alive as a business and get to the other side of it. We're literally billionaires, right?
Yeah.
So you had to be a billionaire, you had to be willing to sue your customer.
That's crazy.
And then in so 2015 through 2020, at that point, you no longer have to be a billionaire and sue your customers. You can at that point just be a billionaire. So it's still like very hard, but you no longer have to sue them. And so then Palmer Luckey sort of starts Anduril. And then call it from 2020 to 2022. My one liner is like, now we're finally standing on the shoulders of giants. These guys have broken down the barriers. The DoD and generally the U.S. government is ready to work with startups. And so you no longer have to be a billionaire suing the government. You no longer have to be a billionaire. At this point, you can just be friends with the billionaire, and that's sort of close enough to you having the appropriate level of power and wealth to be able to do that. And so people like me, who are just merely lowly friends of billionaires, are finally able to start companies. And now in 2022, people extrapolated that trend all the way down. They're like, billionaires that sue the government. Now it's billionaires. Now it's friends of billionaires. Let's take the logical leap. And high school students can now start defense companies that raise, $100 million. And that's obviously a logical conclusion of that trend.
Yeah.
What do you right now? It seems like every investor that's online is like, yeah, I do defense. yeah. I dabble.
I dabble.
I'm a patriot, right?
Yeah.
But is
I'm an
that
expert.
still the case where the average VC in 10 years is like, yeah, I do defense, or is it the average VC is like, yeah, I kind of FOMO'd in like
Got over my
2023
skis
and
there,
got
didn't
over my
really understand.
skis, and I'm back to
I'm just
back to AI
skiing.
slop.
Just skiing.
Skiing and AI. slop.
They're back to skiing.
They're back to just skiing, not being over their skis on the defense team.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard you guys talk about this when I sort of hopped on, but back when Anduril started in the sort of 2017 time period, a significant amount of the investors that now all talk about defense literally had it in their LPA of the three things that they weren't allowed to invest into was gambling, porn, and defense, and it was like put as one of those top three, effectively like vices. It was in like the vice clause.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty likely that over the next decade, some of those LPAs end up going back to having defense in the vice clause. And all these people that YOLO'd in, their LPs are like, fuck off, like we don't want you doing this again. You were clearly terrible at it. You had no idea what you're doing. We're just putting it like back in the vice clause, and so no investing or port in defense. As far as we're concerned, they're the same thing. Like leave that to OnlyFans and Founders Fund to figure that out.
That's great. The reason I wanted to have you on mostly was to kind of restate and restart the debate around the continuing resolution. We put out a clip from you. We got a lot of text messages. I got a couple essays delivered to me. A lot of ChatGPT stuff coming my way. Can't say I read it all, but I said I will ask Delian about it again next week. So can you restate your thesis on what's going on with the continuing resolution and just the overall DoD budget and what it means for defense tech companies? And then what's been the pushback? What have the good responses been, and what has been like the cope?
Yeah, what's funny is like I see so much of it as like pure copium. Like if you look at the people that are closing the biggest, sort of defense contracts, Tim Hughes at sort of SpaceX, Matt Grimm, Trey Stevens, et cetera, that whole crew at Anduril, Sham Sankar Palantir. Somehow none of those people sort of critiqued sort of my framing of it. I admit my tweet was a little more pithy, but it was funny seeing some of the critiques where I was like, you just didn't watch the clip. Like,
Yeah.
yes, my tweet was like an attempted summary of it. I basically like was a bit hyperbolic in saying that like there are no net new starts. There are going to be some that are potentially allowed, but it all still it needs to be um, uh, paralleled to the original, basically, congressional, and House and Senate, sort of bills that were passed in sort of late February. So, some of the critiques came in from some of these, I think, more junior companies that have a little bit, sort of rose-colored glasses on how they think this process is going to go. In that, yes, it points to allowing that type of reprogramming, and at the same time, you're seeing like in a continuing resolution year going win the F-47 contract. And so I think they have this view of like, oh man, now's the time where I can like all the rules are scrapped. We can totally go reprogram everything. And I'm like, there is some flexibility there, but also like look at what happens when people get a little over their skis. Like one of the topics that I sent you, Fugan, was like around the NASA administrator. It's obviously more on the civil space side than the defense side, but like Elon tweeted out like basically FBISS, we should deorbit it. I don't want that up in space anymore. That shouldn't be a NASA priority. And like, yeah, he got his like, sort of wrist slapped a little bit. He also got his wrist slapped when he like went to the Secretary of the Air Force, and then 2 hours later, the F-47, basically contract got announced, even though Elon's been on this rampage against sort of human rated fighter jets for a long time. So it's like, look, like even Elon isn't able to convince the Air Force that we shouldn't have human rated fighter jets. Like, you think your fucking thing that's like a mediocre copycat of Anduril is somehow going to convince them that they should spend like, money on your fucking Ponzi coin? Like, probably not. Like, I think there's a lot of copium that's going on there. So it's like, and people are like trying to cite these like super, it's like, look, I read the CR, like I know the section that's in there. What matters is not like the exact legalese that is in the continuing resolution. It's like how that's going to be interpreted both by the warfighter and by like Congress that ultimately is going to, sort of go, approve the like, sort of reprogramming and then the, budget, reconciliation, sort of, bills. So anyways, more than I can go into there, but it was like lots of copium. And all the sophisticated players didn't say anything.
Do you think that there's going to be a lot of like sort of potentially wasted talent coming out of this era of defense investing where people want to be founders so bad, but they would actually be potentially much more successful going into Anduril and like working on a specific product and just leveraging, the entire platform that they've built and, the sales channel, everything like that. And the sort of like Silicon Valley ethos of like, everybody's like aspiring to be a founder. Because I think probably at least the three of us and many other people like the Anduril of Anduril is sort of like, probably going to play out. Right. I can
the
say
Anduril
that
votes will probably be Anduril rather than a different company,
Yeah. But yeah, do you see...
Except for Anduril of bears. I think bear domestication is very important, and I think that is a white space that Anduril's weak on. And so...
We're announcing Coogan's new incubation.
Yes.
Ready to go. Co-founding with some Ruskies.
Yes.
Those guys know how to handle their bears.
We're domesticating bears, and you're going to be able to ride them like horses, and we'll also make small ones, and they'll be like teddy bears for your kids. It'll be great.
Yeah. Keith used to always talk about how one of the things I felt like I learned from him was that some of the best companies are actually founded in some of these more like recessionary periods where it's not hot to be a founder because then it's like a lot easier to aggregate talent. Like I think about that even sort of with Varda today. Like I'm very glad that we put together our founding team in 2020 because a bunch of those people in theory today, if we were like trying to put together the founding team, would just like refuse to be on the founding team and instead split up and all raise their own pieces of capital. And so it's like, I would imagine that it's like incredibly hard to be an early stage founder today, trying to recruit super talented people because the super talented, even like 22-year-old Stanford kids are getting like 10 million thrown at them. Like the current like pre-seed seed ecosystem for all things like frontier tech, AI, et cetera, is like in such a crazy bubble right now. And that actually just makes it really hard for generational companies to be founded. Like a part of why Anduril almost certainly was successful is like everybody that like chose to go work at Anduril from 2017 to 2022 before the call of the Ukraine war was like choosing a very contrarian field to work on. Nobody else is going to be go funding those people to be sort of starting companies anytime soon. And so they aggregated a bunch of talent where it's like, okay, yeah, now defense is hot, but Anduril's already off into the races.
We were talking about this with like the year Facebook came out of Harvard. Like I think it was one of the only startups. And so if you were like, I want to work at a startup and you went to Stanford or Harvard, it was like, well, Facebook's kind of the only game in town. And now it's like just take a taxi or take an Uber over to Sand Hill Road and you got $10 million like next week.
Well, the other thing is we've been trained for 20 years, this sort of like dream big,
yep,
call your shot. I'm going to build this amazing CRM. And then you can like put together a team and you can build the amazing CRM. You
can actually do it.
But the thing in hard tech, the challenge is like you run into like physics and you run into all these challenges where it's like you're trying to make some new quantum computing chip and it's like, okay, like you can have the big idea and that doesn't, and you can put together a lot of capital and people and work really hard on it and like you're not always going to get there. Whereas software, at least you can ship the product. Yeah. It might not work.
Dude, this feels like it's like literally like you described my edge basically in like the investing in this sphere where it's like, look, I think there's some amount of like, I'm decent at the founder read, macro, whatever. A bunch of people can do that. The one thing that I do that I think is like relatively unique is like for all of my category investments that sit in the world of like hardware, difficult thing that they're doing, et cetera. I walk the line. I like, go and I talk to like the technician doing assembly. I talk to the thermal engineer doing the thermal model. I talk to like, mechanisms engineer, structures engineer, software engineer, firmware, et cetera. And just like you can, I'm not saying that I'm a world-class engineer in all of those categories or anything like that, but I have enough of a surface level understanding from the work that we do here that I can kind of gauge like, is this person at like the Varda quality bar? And like, doesn't have to be that like literally everybody you encounter is, but if like half the people are looking kind of like schmucks, it's like, well, you can only like, sell a story for so long. At some point you have to like deliver hardware to a customer that works. And so it's been fascinating to me to watch investors pony up like $100+ million to companies that are like, consistently having hardware fail out in the field where it's like, what do you think is going to happen here? Like, if you give them $50 million and the hardware's failing nonstop, $100 million isn't necessarily going to be the thing that solves the problem. Like they've already got cultural rot to the level that it's like basically going to be impossible to backtrack. Yeah. But there's so many people that like just don't even have the capability to diligence that. And, I'm not, I think sometimes I admit that I can over rotate to like, I'm probably on like, when I think about amount that I weight product engineering relative to like, our CEO, Peter, right? He's obviously probably more on the opposite end of like, thinks that people over rotate on that. And I probably am one of the people that sometimes does. But in this field, it's definitely, I think, saved us from some, sort of investments where like, we debated making a Series A investment and then you watch the company. It's like they have like 6 projects in a row fail. Now people are for some reason rescuing those companies and still giving them $100 million. But like at some point, I'm like, how long does that go for? I was literally texting with our colleague, John Luda yesterday. I was just like, he was like texting me these like 3 or 4 companies like headcount scaling like crazy, like it must be like going really well, right? And I'm like, no, like every satellite that they've sent up is failing. They haven't closed any contracts. Like I don't see any pass-through program of record. Like they're scaling, like they're really good at hiring, but like not necessarily good people. So like hiring bad people is not somehow people like use headcount scale as a proxy for like the success of the company. I'm like, I don't know that that's like a thing one should be focused on. So yeah, I think there's going to be some tough reconciliation that happens, over the course of the next year or two, where it's like, there's going to be like, 50 to 60% of this field that's just going to have to die off or get acquired for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. The other thing that's funny, people love to roast like market maps, right? Like the joke is like, all right, if there's a market map, you're too late. But then the market maps like actually provide, like if you're an investor, you should really understand the market that you're investing in so that when a company comes to you and you think it's a smart team and you're excited about it, you actually understand like, okay, is there a 2 times better team that's like doing this exact thing? The other thing is like, I've seen, I've made a number of, I think, smart investments in this space, and I'm sure like just sort of hard tech broadly, and I'm sure like some that will zero out, but I try to pay attention to like, you really have to pension it. It's not all about like, oh, a tier 1 is doing this. It's like, is somebody that's been doing robotics investing for 20 years and has like, is on their 7th fund, are they doing this? Because they've seen it all, right? And you have to ask yourself as an investor, like, why do I have the right to even have an allocation in this company? And a lot of times, if you're coming into this space and you're making some of those net new investments, that company has been seen by all the specialist funds and like nothing happened. And so like you're now getting like the sort of luck of getting to take a shot on this company when like a bunch of people that have invested in other similar winners have already said, yeah, it's not for us, or like, we're going to wait and see kind of what happens. So
anyway, can we move on to the Cygnus spacecraft? Can you break down, I'd never even heard this word term before. Can you give me a little bit of history and then what's going on with the news?
Yeah, I mean, I brought it up because I think it was like 2 weeks ago that we chatted about like the astronauts being stranded and then sort of SpaceX going to bring them back down. This past week, it was revealed that the Cygnus spacecraft, which is a spacecraft, I'm pretty sure made by Northrop Grumman, that originally was awarded basically commercial cargo contract to the ISS. This was like back in like 2010, 11. It was basically you had Cargo Dragon, which was done by SpaceX, and then the Cygnus spacecraft done by Northrop Grumman to basically deliver cargo, so like food, water, et cetera, to the International Space Station. It generally performed, so decently well. It's kind of a crazy vehicle in that it's only one-time use. Like it doesn't even have like a heat shield or any way to like come back to Earth. So you literally like ship it up to the ISS, it docks, drops off its things, and then it just like burns up in orbit. So it's like the epitome of just old school, sort of aerospace. They didn't even like attempt to make it economical from the like fundamental design phase, but like it's delivered plenty of cargo to the ISS at this point. This past week, they dropped it, and so NASA was like, "Look, like yes, this has been tested, et cetera, but like we don't know what happened in the drop. We need to basically send this thing back and run it through a full testing campaign and make sure that it's okay." And so that means that that cargo that previously supposed to be delivered to the ISS via Northrop Grumman now is yet again going over to SpaceX. And so it's just like one of these moments where it's like, if SpaceX did not exist right now, like the United States would neither have like Boeing able to take crew to the ISS, nor would it have Northrop Grumman able to take, basically cargo to the ISS. And so it's like, without SpaceX, the astronauts would not only be stranded, but also starving.
What do you mean by dropped? They dropped it. Does that mean drop the program or physically dropped it?
No. They like physically dropped it. Like the spacecraft like fell. It fell.
It just fell.
Yeah, it fell.
Had an accident.
Like you're not supposed to.
A little oopsie. A little oopsie in the space factory.
On, like how much the pulley could hold, and they fucking dropped it. And so it's like,
I hope we're gonna. Is there like security camera footage we can find somehow? Like
I think that Northrop is gonna try and control that real tight, avoid anybody.
We gotta call our friends over at the CIA, NSA, the deep state. Really get them to fork that over because
we need the blooper reel.
We need the blooper reel. We've seen the SpaceX crashes. I need to see the pod dropping and crashing.
We we drop our spacecraft, but we do it on purpose, right?
Yeah,
that was the one that we dropped from space back down to the ground, but that was on purpose.
Wow, I have not been to Varda HQ recently. It looks like you have a lot more equipment. That is filling up. Congratulations.
We are packed in like sardines. We've got, that's the one that I just showed you is the first one that landed last year. Second one landed in Australia 2 weeks ago, and it's out at an air show. Third one's currently up in orbit. Fourth and fifth are off to the side of me right now. So yeah, this place is turning into an operation.
Yeah. Real operation.
Do you have a follow-up? I have another one after.
Go for it. I want to cover in maybe the last 5 minutes, like slop as a trend.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fun generally. But let's close out with the space stuff, and then we'll go on that. I want to know more about Jared Isaacman. Momentum seems to be building for Jared Isaacman to become NASA administrator. What are the dynamics? What should we be reading into this? RFK got confirmed. Is it a similar process? Like, and what does this mean? Like, what's the vibe around him generally?
Yeah, I mean, Jared is definitely like really beloved by the space community, ourselves included. Like, it's really awesome to have somebody that is both a phenomenal entrepreneur, right? Shift 4 Payments, sort of mega company, but then also is like putting his own capital and literally life on the line by like paying for his own, basically space missions with SpaceX. And then he's the first private astronaut to ever do a spacewalk. I don't know if you guys saw that, live stream from, I'm forgetting the exact time, but it's like
that was him?
Sometime. That was him, Jared.
No
Isaacman.
way.
He
I did see
literally
that.
he's the first private citizen to fucking go out into the vacuum of space and peer outside of the spacecraft and look at
live
Earth.
Streaming so we could run.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get to space run one day. Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
So
yeah.
I mean, look,
so what's the vibe?
Super legit. You know what I mean? Like he is literally a like privately himself sponsored astronaut. Putting his real life on the line. That mission could have gone poorly, could have died on it, etc. And he obviously sort of didn't. So really beloved. But he is affiliated, for sure with Elon, since his entire Polaris, set of missions was all contracted with SpaceX. He obviously has done a ton of press with Elon, etc. So when Elon made this, sort of comment around wanting to basically deorbit the ISS sooner than the original plan. So the current plan is basically out of the decade. Elon was pushing for let's just deorbit it next year. Now I assume from his perspective, it's, hey, I don't really see the value of this program. We should use that budget for, sort of pushing straight to Mars. What's the point of, sort of these human rated stations, both run by the government or these private ones? And there was a bit of a slap on the wrist, for that via, basically Ted Cruz, sort of the senator from Texas that is the, senior chair of the the Senate Science Committee, which basically controls the NASA budget and is also, basically responsible for, sort of voting and confirming the schedule for the NASA Administrator confirmation, basically stalled, right? He refused to actually set a date for the NASA administrator. So now you've had to see like a bunch of governors, and other senators basically say, hey, Cruz, we really like Jared Isaacman. A bunch of space entrepreneurs have to sort of send Cruz a letter. He's finally relented and said, fine, I will set a date. But I want Jared Isaacman, sort of coming out and explicitly saying that he's in support of the ISS going through the end of the decade, in support of these commercial space stations. And so why is, sort of Cruz in support of that? It's because, the Johnson Space Center, which is where the vast majority of the terrestrial jobs that support the space station is in, Texas, and it's his district, and it's, sort of his constituents. And so, you're starting to just see these tensions of look, yeah, you've got tech's greatest leaders at the helm of the government. But that doesn't mean that there's going to be some not going to be some antibodies that prevent people from getting exactly sort of what they want done. And so this is all more on the civil space side of things, but I think has a lot of parallels to what everybody's thinking about in defense, where it's look, I'm again going to point out, it's Elon is phenomenally successful, super powerful, rich, etc. But there are antibodies and balances of power built into the U.S. government, and Ted Cruz is clearly showing that he can swing his dick around a little bit and say you want to fuck with my ISS, I'm going to fuck with your administrator, and I'm going to delay his confirmation hearing, and I'm going to bump it out until it sounds like it might not be until May at this point. And then that does have a real operational effect in NASA, where it's just look, there's this NASA reauthorization bill which basically sets NASA's budget for the next 5 to 7 years. That's kind of stalled out because there's no administrator. None of the major sort of program leads are making huge swings right now while they're waiting for the administrator. So it's NASA's kind of frozen, right? And this has downstream operational effects. This may slow down our ability to get more lunar missions, sort of booked, actually figure out what the Mars program, sort of looks like. And so it's just a reminder to people that us in tech have to always remember that there are also jobs that Senator Cruz is going to be making sure to stick around too.
Follow up. I mean, the ISS budget is $3 billion a year. Crazy idea. We get a couple of our buddies together, make it into a casino or something. Could we not privatize this thing?
Jed McCaleb, Mr. Crypto, sort of man is trying to, put, crypto money to use and turn it into a space station. And I kind of see crypto, in my opinion, as basically just gambling. So, he's basically already making it. He's, all he needs to do is, maybe it's not craps tables, but it's, a couple Coinbase servers up there that are, getting you hooked right into the, sort of live stream of trading shit coins.
I guess you can't really roll dice in 0G because the dice never fall.
Well, yeah, if aliens are ever going to come and assimilate on Earth, we should have a space casino where they could kind of learn the American way of life.
It's like an Ellis Island
for come here, because if the culture shock, if they came here and they
have to know how to gamble
sports betting
if they're going to integrate, for sure.
They would just probably kill us all.
Exactly.
You guys I don't even know what you guys are doing.
Or that's our planetary defense. We just get the aliens hooked on gambling. They become total degenerates. They're mortgaging their home planet in order to be able to afford it. And we're actually, you thought you were coming to conquer us, but sorry, we're sending our bookies back over your planet. We're fucking break all your kneaps and take it.
Yeah,
so, that's maybe the best planetary defense scheme. Who needs asteroid deflection? You've got space casinos.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes. What you got?
Big. What's your take on yesterday? I was joking around earlier. I said in hindsight, Sputnik really was the Ghibli moment of the Cold War, but yesterday felt like a big moment. John and I had a couple posts go pretty viral and break containment, and people still were quoting them and being like, all right, guys, stop joking around with me. Who's got the filter app? So it still feels like there's people out there
that didn't know that it was OpenAI, ChatGPT. They're just there must be a new app out there that does this.
Yeah.
And,
what's your reaction? Are you long? I'm personally, I'm short the word slop, but I'm long the underlying trend. But I'd love to hear your take.
I'm going to relate it back to defense, which is, sort of markup maps are no good. Focus on a long tail winner. There's a whole fucking set of 100 AI image generation companies that all just got, fucking Sherlocked by OpenAI and are going to be totally irrelevant because they've got the biggest brand and know they have the best technology. Good luck catching up when you're sort of losing on both angles. I think you're going to see this stuff get implemented into Hollywood ASAP. I mean, there's a whole set of things where you can look, there's going to for sure still be human fine details. There's things that it's not perfect at. It probably never will be quite perfect at. But if you want to start throwing together rough draft, vision boards, etc., and then what you'll end up seeing is the equivalent of that there's sort of now sort of two engineers can build $1 billion AI company. 2 animators and a director can make the next Pixar film basically because they have so much sort of leverage. And so
it's bullish for OpenAI and also bullish for Jason Carmen, right?
Yes,
but you just don't want to be in the middle.
Yeah.
But it's like short all the dudes that just invested like $500 million into like these like slop companies basically. And it's just like good fucking luck. And it's the same thing with defense. It's like, bullish on Anduril, bullish on the warfighter that gets new tools.
Totally.
Don't recommend being anywhere in between those two.
Yep, exactly. Don't get stuck in the middle, the barbell.
Don't get just out in the sloppy middle, as we like to call it.
The sloppy middle.
It's the White Lotus sort of reference there is be careful of the sloppy middle between the brothers.
Oh, I haven't watched the latest episode, so but I've heard enough that I get it, and it's not good.
Yeah, you can skip that one. White Lotus is funny because like it starts the season, it's like kind of relaxing because it's like these resort settings.
Yeah, you're just hanging out at
and
Four
you're like,
Seasons.
oh, it's just like I relate to these people in different ways, and like. And then it's like, oh, it just gets so dark, like episode by episode.
I want nothing to do with any of these people.
Yeah, what so somebody that launched an image generation tool is like Mike Spicer over at Sutter Hill Ventures. Like they've done, didn't they do like Palo Alto?
Snowflakes.
They're like the
legit
goats of incubations in many ways. Comes out with an image generation tool. What do you do at this point? Obviously, not even just speaking directly to him, but there's like Midjourney and there's a lot of other players, and it just feels like maybe there is no edge in distribution. Relating back last week,
Midjourney is not in the conversation because they haven't raised money.
True.
And so it's like
but they're dependent. They raise money every day from their customers.
I guess, but just
but
in
the
terms
other.
of the
So
business.
the funny thing is we talked on the show last week about a PT quote around like. You need basically distribution for a monopoly, and you can get a monopoly from product, but you can also get a monopoly from distribution.
Yep.
And so it is but like, do you think these, image generation models should be rethinking their life and future plans and the game is lost? Or is there going to be, if you just lean in, let's say like, set up shop here in Hollywood and just work with all the studios and say like you spend billions a year.
What would you do if you were actually running a $50 million Series B stage image generation company?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is very top of mind. Like, I literally met up with Mike, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, to like talk about, what he was, sort of working on. And I'm like, I'm a huge fan of Mike's. We've worked together on a, sort of handful of things. Obviously, he's like crushed it with Snowflake. He's like clearly one of the Valley's, sort of best incubator entrepreneurs, investors, execs, leaders, etc. But like, I don't envy being in that position. But, I think you're seeing this in a bunch of different fields where it's like, you've got the, sort of, mice that are trying to dart around the, sort of elephants, and like these like big tech companies are both very sophisticated, like have great engineering, but are also massive, right? Like, I mean, again, just look at like what SpaceX is doing with Starship and like, stomping out a bunch of, other, sort of mice, and they're the elephant. What Anduril's doing, stomping out a bunch of mice. It's like, it's not an easy time to be like a mid-stage company that's trying to dart around all these major players that are like, not like old school incumbents that are moving slowly, but like are led by Sam Altman and like, are really pushing the fold. And so, yeah, tactically, like if I was in Mike's shoes, I think it's like, look, the like consumer play, that just seems basically impossible to catch up on. It's like, this is kind of good enough for any consumer app, right? Like, it's not good enough to like immediately go make a feature length film, but it's good enough for any consumer to like, send a photo, to their wife basically. Yeah. And they already have the winning consumer brand. So don't even try to do that. Go where the elephant isn't even headed, dart in the opposite direction. I think, go like heavy on enterprise, build up studio relationships, try and convince them, sort of, hey, look, if you start using, sort of chat GPT, et cetera, for this stuff, they're going to use you for training data. We're going to make like proprietary models that like, fine tune to your own aesthetic and like the specific film that you're working on. And we'll make sure the data only stays basically like in-house, right? Like you just need to like, just constantly be thinking about like, what is your, sort of angle that is super unique, but also those are like all really constrained TAMs relative to like the thing that, I think OpenAI is, going off and capturing. And so, yeah, I mean, I really love Mike and I think he's a phenomenal entrepreneur, but like, I also don't envy, like, I can guarantee you he was fucking up late last night and, is grinding today with his like, exec team to figure out like what their, sort of approach is in light of like, this new world. And that's what's so crazy about like tech accelerationism, all this stuff happening is like, dude, like this stuff, like I felt like when I was in the Valley in like 2014, like happened over the course of like 18-month periods. And it's like, dude, this stuff, like it feels like literally every month now we have like crazy new capabilities that come online that massively disrupt how to build like a Series B company. Versus in 2014, that new technology is disrupting like a late stage Series B company, like didn't honestly happen sort of that often, like never happened. You kind of had like your stable growth, like even at Vardo, and the stuff that we do is like super hard, long time frames, et cetera. Like I feel like we actually like literally need to be nimble on our feet on like a month by month basis between like the changing of DoD priorities, congressional priority, what other space companies are doing, how supply chains are maturing, what the fuck China's sort of doing. It's like, God, man, it's such a dynamic world, and the wealth accrues to the sort of riches. So good to be Peter, good to be Sam. I don't
Well, yeah,
I
I was
don't envy
joking.
myself for Spicer.
We were joking around. A lot of early stage founders will like time a release to try to catalyze a fundraise, and it felt like there was a world where Sam was like, "All right, team. Like, we know Ghibli will go viral. Like, just make sure that this is perfect. Everything else can, everything else doesn't have to be perfect, but like, we need to take over the timeline. We need to go mainstream this day. I'm closing the round on Monday. Like, just go.
Also, Google had just launched something that most people think is like competitive, but the product is just buried in AI Studio. And it was going to break containment and it was going to be a Google story. And Sam was just like, not today. I love it.
Yeah.
And then maybe he paid that one influencer to make the photo of his wife and get that to go viral. All I'm saying is it was just a little too convenient.
We need to get a tinfoil hat over on your side.
Yeah, we got it. We got it right here.
Yeah.
The exciting thing, bring it back to hard tech and defense, is like we need better science fiction. We need the next generation of science fiction, and if we can kind of like open source that, and everybody can create,
I love that.
Inspiring visions. Of
someone
the
has a
future,
good idea and they can instantiate
You shouldn't need
That's amazing.
$200 million to like imagine the future and like convey that idea. And that seems like the biggest opportunity to take away if you're not.
Even if it's a little sloppy right now, the art will come.
Yeah. Anyways, great to see you.
Thanks
you
for
having
stopping by.
us.
Good luck with the rest
Later,
of your day.
boys.
See ya.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
You
See
too.
ya.